So news of the week, and before I start the news of the week, this actually came into the mail today. Whoops, this is. Let me do it a little bit better. It's the FC Cincinnati home jersey for their inaugural 2019 MLS season. I got this off eBay for $75, which was still pretty expensive, but at least it's not as expensive if you would have got at an MLS soccer store. And right here on the bottom, it even says 2019 MLS inaugural season. So with this jersey, that means my tally in terms of the jersey that I own is now up to 5, and that I now own 4 different teams jersey. I own the Quakes jersey, I own the LAFC jersey, I own the Orlando City jersey, and now I own the FC Cincinnati jersey. And I'm hoping that Atlanta United would be the next jersey that I am going to own because they are the defending champ. And I know last year I kind of didn't make a promise saying that whoever win MLS Cup this year, I will definitely buy a jersey of that team that won MLS Cup. And, I kind of still want to do it, but since it cost me $75 to buy that jersey, and I'm already kind of blown my budget for that FC Cincinnati jersey, it's going to take maybe a month or two for my budget to stabilize again, and that I'm going to get an Atlanta United jersey. But I'll make sure I'll definitely get one by this year. But either way, let's get back to the news of the week. So the first news is that there is a report that Atletico Madrid will be this year MLS All-Star opponent. And actually, it's not really a report. It's more like it's almost confirmed that Atletico Madrid will be this year MLS All-Star opponent down in Orlando. And this is definitely an interesting kind of opponent because Atletico Madrid, one of the biggest team in Europe. And also Antoine Griezmann gets a chance to play in an MLS stadium and also play against a couple of MLS players. And the reason why I emphasize that is because, he's been saying that he wants to come to MLS eventually during his latter part of his career. And there's already a lot of report that he might be joining Inter Miami once Miami gets into the league. So this is a good chance for him to, get to play against some of the MLS player that is in the league. And although it's not really an MLS team, he gets to face some of the best player in that league in this All-Star game. So yeah, that will be very interesting to see. But next up, the only signing of this week is that Sporting KC have signed Nicholas Hasler after being waived by the Chicago Fire. And I believe Hasler was picked up by the Chicago Fire this offseason from Toronto FC. And man, this definitely seems very quick for them to just kind of waive him off and just kind of cut him. And Sporting KC basically just said, thank you very much. We'll basically take this guy for our depth in the defensive area. And I think this is definitely a good signing for Sporting KC to add to their depth while not even spending anything to try to get him. And he's a decent defender too. Don't get me wrong. So, and I'm not quite sure why the Fire decided to waive him off. But next up, Fanendo Adi. So he was stopped speeding and driving under the influence early Sunday morning and will now have to undergo MLS substance abuse and behavioral health assessment. So this assessment is a thing that if you are a player that commits a domestic violence, or in this case you commit a DUI or a speeding kind of penalty, you will have to undergo this assessment. And usually that doesn't really take very long, but you have to complete this assessment before you're eligible to be playing in an MLS game. And, for Fanendo Adi, this is definitely a very bad look for him. And I don't know how in the world would you be speeding and driving under the influence on literally after the Columbus Crew, or not the Columbus Crew, but the Union versus FC Cincinnati game. I mean, I remember that game, it was raining. How can you be pulled for speeding in the rain? Like, unless you are really just kind of crazy or just really drunk, which I'm assuming Audi was in this case because he was driving under the influence, there's no way you should be speeding whenever it's raining and it's pouring down. And in fact, that is a very dangerous thing to be speeding in the rain. I mean, it's already danger enough to speed when it's like a clear sunny day, but it just makes it even more dangerous when it's like raining because you can't really see as well on a early morning than you would do in an early morning when it was raining or not. And also for Fanendo Adi, this is also a very bad look in terms of his leader status of FC Cincinnati. I mean, he is basically the leader of this team, and he is the DP signing of this team. And there's definitely a lot of guys from the FC Cincinnati team that look up to him and basically kind of look up to him as the captain of the team, even though technically the captain of this team is Kendall Waston. They still look at Adi because he has the experience, but now with him doing this, I don't know those players would trust him as much now than they would be before he kind of commits this kind of offense. So certainly this is definitely not a good look for Fanendo Adi, and it's also a pretty big loss for FC Cincinnati too, because now Adi will have to complete this assessment. We don't know how long that's gonna take, and they will not have him in some of these games, and FC Cincinnati might even think about suspending him after this assessment just for kind of disciplinary reasons. So he could potentially be out for a couple of games. But next up, and now talk about some injury report in the news of the week. Jose Mora is undergoing a jaw surgery and will return in 4 weeks. So that's definitely great news for DC United to hear, because Mora is one of the more important players for their team, and that whenever you see guys undergo surgery, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking because you don't know how. Usually when you have the word surgery input into an injury report, it usually takes very long, but the good news is it's only a jaw surgery, so he should be back in 4 weeks time. Another guy that also suffered a jaw injury is Harrison Affle, who suffered a broken jaw, and I'm assuming he's going to have the same jaw injury that Jose Mora is going to be undergoing, but he will be out for at least 6 weeks. And for the Columbus Crew, this is definitely another devastating loss. I mean, the Crew this year, they just cannot catch a break this year in terms of injury. They already have suffered a ton of injuries in their team, and now losing Harrison Affle, who is a very decent player for them and a very key player in that midfield, this is gonna hurt for them. So hopefully he will be back sooner or later, but like I said, he's gonna be out for at least 6 weeks. Next up, Carlos Vela, of course, won Player of the Week, as I mentioned yesterday in my MLS review. This week, Player of the Week award, there were definitely a lot of players that could be considered Player of the Week. So you got guys like Pozuelo with the super debut that he had with TFC against NYCFC. You had Zlatan with the brace. Christian Nemeth scoring a hat-trick. And you know how I always said that when you score a hat-trick, you usually win Player of the Week. Yeah, but that is unless you have another guy that scored a hat-trick, which Carlos Vela did. And also Vela had an assist in this game too, which Nemeth, I believe he didn't get an assist in that game. So that's the difference between both guys that gets hat-trick. And it also depends on which opponent that you were facing. And although Carlos Vela, his LAFC team was facing the Quakes, it was on the road compared to Christian Nemeth facing against a Montreal team that was pretty depleted, and they were playing at home. So obviously Carlos Vela win this week Player of the Week, but I have no problem if fans disagree with this, because like I said, there was definitely a lot of players that could have been considered Player of the Week. This is probably the toughest week so far this season in terms of choosing a guy to be the Player of the Week this week. But next up, Efra Alvarez has accepted another call up from the Mexican under-17 teams. Now, before U.S. fan is going to be freaking out and they're going to be panicking the fact that Efra Alvarez will never represent the U.S. ever again. Well, even though he's representing the Mexican under-17 team, he still could change his mind and still could represent the U.S. under-17 team, because according to FIFA rule, you can basically represent 2 countries or even maybe 3 countries when you're in the youth level, and until you represent a country in the senior level and you make your first cap with the senior squad of that nation, that's when you can't change to another nation. So Efra Alvarez, he can still join the U.S. as a senior squad and still could join the U.S. under 17 team if he wished to do it. But knowing the fact that he already said that he kind of enjoyed playing with Mexico more than he would with the U.S., and also knowing how the U.S. Soccer Federation is totally inept in terms of dealing with this issue, where you have a guy that has kind of like a dual nationality, especially Mexican American that has a dual nationality, and that they just don't do much to convince these players. And usually 9 out of 10 times when this happens, that Mexican American player will always join El Tri, because El Tri does a good job in terms of convincing those players, and that's what is so frustrating to be a U.S. One of the most frustrating element to be a U.S. fan, because you have a soccer federation that just, you're potentially going to get a very decent player on your team, but if you're not going to convince him to join your national team instead of another national team with his other dual nationality, then yeah, it is really frustrated. And for me, for Efra Alvarez, if he decided to join Mexico, then I have no problem whatsoever, and that I wish him the best joining with Mexico. And I know there's some U.S. fans that has kind of called Efra Alvarez a traitor, and that he should not be representing Mexico if he already represent the U.S. Well, here's the thing. He only represented the U.S. in the under 17 level. And this also goes back to what I said about the FIFA rule, where you can represent multiple nation in the youth level, and it's only when you go into the senior level that's when you basically can't represent another country, unless there are some special kind of exception to it, and that you have like a one-time switch kind of thing. So yeah, for those of people that said he's a traitor, I don't think you understand the rule, and you clearly are not a U.S. men's national team fan. And I understand your anger out of this, but seriously, there's nothing we can do about this. You can't just call this kid a traitor. He's only 16 years old. Imagine calling a 16-year-old a traitor when he has a choice to make. That just makes no sense whatsoever. But yeah, next up, Disco has fined 4 players this week. So the disciplinary committee has fined. So far this week, they have fined the most player out of the previous week. I know last week there was like 2 players that they fined, but this week they fined 4 players. The first player to get fined was Diego Rossi for embellishment, and yeah, this was definitely embellishment. Like when I saw it on TV, when he was basically trying to, when he was trying to get chasing down Tommy Thompson, and that Tommy Thompson, his hand was kind of a little bit high, but there was at no point his hand was about to kind of held back and basically knock Diego Rossi's face. But Diego Rossi just kind of pretend that he does that, and that was just that was a ridiculous kind of foul, and I'm surprised he didn't even get a yellow card or even getting sent off for that, because that is just absolutely ridiculous and nonsense. Damar Krylak is another player that also got fined, but he didn't get fined for the headbutt. What he did get fined was for the failure to leave the pitch. So it actually took him a minute to leave the pitch. Originally, he said that he didn't intentionally want to headbutt that Dallas player, and even Mike Pecky even said in the post-game interview that Damar Krylak had no intention of headbutting. And when you look on the replay, yes, Krylak didn't really make a lot of bit of a contact in that headbutt, but as soon as you make that kind of motion of trying to headbutt someone, yeah, that is definitely going to consider a headbutt. No matter if you make a contact or not, if you make that kind of motion, usually that is going to be a red card. And then the final two players that also got fined actually happened in one situation, which was Blanco and Corona, both getting fined because they violated the hands to the face policy. And there wasn't really much to this. Both guys was kind of like just holding each other's hands, almost, well, not really holding each other's hand, but putting their hands in front of their opponent's face, almost like friends. And then they started to get a little bit more rowdy on that. But anytime when you decided to put your hands to the face of an opponent, that is an automatic kind of fine, and an automatic kind of description of violating the league policy of hands to the face. But finally, Sacramento has released a new MLS stadium rendering, and I'm actually gonna pull it up for you guys to show you this new stadium rendering. Here it is. Not quite sure you guys can see it very well because of the glare, but yeah, this is basically the new stadium rendering. It actually kind of looks very similar to the previous one. You still kind of have on the exterior you have like the red kind of diamond that is on the exterior, and it's a decent stadium. I wouldn't say it's the best stadium out of the stadium rendering that we have seen with some of these expansion team and potential expansion team. But yeah, I have a feeling Sacramento will eventually get a team. I mean, there is right now no team in the U.S. that deserve, or no city in the U.S. that deserve more of an MLS team than what Sacramento has. This team has been begging the league to get them into the league and being an expansion team for almost like 6 years now. And I think with now getting the stadium ready to go, and also the fact that they have now a multi-billion-dollar kind of owner, there is no more kind of excuse saying why the Sacramento doesn't deserve a team. And I'm really hoping they come to the league, because now with them coming into the league, that means we can have a NorCal rivalry between the Quakes and Sacramento. And for once, I can actually do an away day where I don't have to stay at a night in a hotel. So yeah, please MLS, make this happen. Hopefully this will happen sooner than later, because yeah, I really want Sacramento to come into the league. But yeah, either way, that is pretty much it for all the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these news? And as usual, make sure you guys tell me if I miss any important news down in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.